Okay, good morning and welcome to our May learning series from the Reynolds Company. We appreciate you attending. We are recording this session and we make them available afterwards, typically on our YouTube channel for anyone who missed it or would like to go back and watch it again. My name is Wayne Welk, and I'm just going to kick things off here this morning before turning over to our guest speakers. So today our topic is going to be an update on industrial security, and we have some great guest speakers from Rockwell Automation as well as from our own specialist team, and I'll introduce them here in a moment. So like we normally do before we start our learning series, is we always talk about what's coming up here in the future. So here we are in May already, getting close to summertime. But through the summer, we'll have a couple of topics, one in June on an IO update. July, we'll talk about edge analytics and what's kind of been going on with both the edge products and some of the analytics software options from Rockwell. And then in August, we'll have a process update around our Plant PX and our process IO as well. September will be a drives update, and October rounds out our year for learning series topics. And as we've been traditionally doing, we'll have a preview of what's to come at Automation Fair 2024, because here it is, time to start talking about Automation Fair already. If you want to register for any of these events or see any of our previous events, we, as well as links back to go watch the recorded sessions, we always invite you to go to our resources page at reynoldsonline.com and or reach out to your local specialists, and we'll be more than happy to point you in the right direction. So speaking of Automation Fair, it's time to start talking about that. This year, Automation Fair is in Anaheim, California. It will be the week of November the 18th. The big change this year, beyond what happened last year as far as the changes to Automation Fair, is that the expo will be a 3-day event. So the floor expo will be open on Tuesday, as well as the Wednesday and Thursday, which has been the traditional dates. So information is still pretty preliminary, but dates are set. The agenda here is coming together. Registration is not open yet, so we'll continue to update you throughout the next couple months once registration gets open. So just to put it on your save the date calendar, just mark the week of November the 18th. All right, and now on to our guest presenters. So we have 2 guest presenters from Rockwell, Chad Humphreys and Craig Griswold. And kind of closing out our presentation later on will be Brandon Singh, assisted by Tyler Britt, both automation specialists with the Reynolds Company. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chad and Craig.
Thank you, Wayne, and good morning, everyone. As Wayne said, my name is Chad Humphreys. I'm a network and security consultant for Rockwell Automation, based in the North Texas area, and have nationwide coverage. Craig, if you'd like to do a quick introduction before we screen share here real quick.
Craig Griswold. I am based out of Florida, so I have coverage pretty much from Florida along the Gulf Coast all the way down into Houston for our software and control platform.
Okay. Thank you very much, Craig. So today we've been asked to provide a lot of product security focused updates. So we'll be talking a number of topics over the next 45 minutes. So wanted to just give definition. Here's Craig and myself. As we get started here, I really wanted to emphasize the importance of getting connected with Rockwell. We have a dedicated link that we call Engage, which allows our partners, our customers, to become a part of our community and have a voice. So as you can see, I'm logged in under my profile here, and it gives you an access to quite a bit of information, and also just an online forum where you can share your thoughts, ideas, or even concerns, and get feedback from both Rockwell and industry peers. So just food for thought. Hope you'll consider becoming a part of the connected community at Rockwell. So, sorry, folks, give me just a second. I have some latency on my end. Okay, so here's the kind of the agenda. I promise this will not be a death by PowerPoint today. We're going to touch on some high-level topics and just give some context to kind of what's going on from a product security perspective. First, industrial control system security, what's at stake? As you think about your priorities as an organization, I think we would all agree that when we're trying to achieve desirable business outcomes, we usually break it down amongst kind of 4 general areas. So risk reduction, asset utilization, ways to reduce operating expense and increase revenue. And as your trusted partner, these are kind of the way that we look at this. Now, this is the lens by which we look at, how we're here to serve you, how we're here to help you solve business challenges. And I guess, what I wanted to impress today is when you think about the importance of cybersecurity in years past, say 10, 15 years ago to modern day, like it or not, cybersecurity incidents can have a pretty profound net negative impact on your business. So they really must be prioritized at this moment in time. So the other thing to consider that is commonly talked about in the marketplace from what we see is, what's at risk is there are terms like cyber risk quantification, which really is taken, with my legal background with data, this is something that is really garnished a lot of attention in terms of the cost of a data breach. I would tell you that like the Ponemon Institute and IBM 10, 12 years ago, when they started publishing information about the average cost of a data breach, and unfortunately that number has grown exponentially because there are new laws in place that are really honing in on security programs and what security controls are in place. So I feel like sharing this today with you is relevant because I wanted to give some context to the importance of deploying zero trust and leveraging tools like FactoryTalk Policy Manager to really lock down your communications in your environment. Because again, 10, 12 years ago, when these 2 brands right here first started publishing information about the cost of a data breach, those numbers were relevant then, but they are dramatically different to this day. Okay, so secure protocols, why are they important? I wanted to start with the graphic for those of you listening in that are not necessarily Ethernet or IT professionals. We in the IT field or the data, especially the data security field, we commonly think of this age-old that we call it the data triad. Confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So from a Rockwell perspective, we're trying to bake some of these feature sets into our technologies, and these really encompass what zero trust is all about, right? So we're trying to make it as simple as possible for our customers to protect the current investments that you already have in your infrastructure and modernize where necessary, right? So we'll also be talking about the benefits of, say, OPC UA and having Ethernet-based communications that are open protocol, a common presentation layer of the data to make quick actionable use of it. Because as we know, one of the main challenges in the OT environment is when you have a mixture of different technologies that speak different protocol languages, that adds complexity to again harmonizing the data in the environment to make it quick actionable. Okay, so again, we're talking about this is a lot of information on the slide, so I'll break it down in simple terms. So again, we're still talking about in the context of zero trust. When you see authentication, integrity, confidentiality, think data triad model, think zero trust. When you think zero trust, please think SIP security, right? And the benefits of this are it helps prevent unauthorized devices and people, right? Think of even threat actors, people with malicious intent. This is a tool that is intended to prevent unauthorized communications or even access to sensitive machines in the environment, right? So it'll help prevent tampering or modification of communications, right? So FactoryTalk Policy Manager, which is a part of our overall FactoryTalk directory, FactoryTalk security portfolio, is the tool by which you can assign zero trust to the OT assets in your environment. Okay, so how do we do this? So number one, we'll manage authenticity. We'll even have X.509 certificates associated with individual devices, but it's got to have a trusted username and password. And even Craig will talk about this in a moment, but even the integrations of multi-factor authentication, data integrity checks, as well as confidentiality I feel like the next slide kind of talks about this a little bit better. So we're gonna, with device identity, right? So we're gonna have X.509 v3 digital certificates, right, to identify devices. We're going to manage device authentication, username, password. We're going to have secure handshakes before any data is allowed or anyone's allowed access to both FactoryTalk Policy Manager or even individual devices in the environment. Right, we're going to do data integrity checks. We use HMAC SHA-256. And even, we're trying to protect the integrity of both OPC UA traffic. So, and again, for those not familiar, open platform communications, unified architecture, right? So we're trying to, regardless of what assets live in your environment, whether they be Ethernet or not, we're trying to harmonize the data in a way that we can challenge the integrity of data in transit when it goes from point A to point B, machine to machine, right? Or even data confidentiality. AES 128 encryption. So when you think about this from both a data at rest and a data in transit perspective, if the data is in transit, we're trying to encrypt the transport, the physical layer from point A to point B across the environment. And we're also trying to challenge, what's going through that secure tunnel. When it left, the source IP machine and arrived at its destination, is it the same as what it was, right? And again, we're trying to manage authentication to even the machine via tools like FactoryTalk Policy Manager, right? This is all part of this kind of zero trust architecture that we really need current day in the OT environment. When I say that, even from a legal background, just how much this has become scrutinized. If you want to get technical on this and use terms like fiduciary responsibility and duty of care and duty to inform, the concept of zero trust on the OT floor now is something that is being widely discussed at many levels from what we see with our customers and even policy writers. Okay, so OPC UA. Craig, I believe you were going to touch on this one, so I don't want to steal your thunder. I'll go ahead and pass the baton here.
Okay. Yeah, so the latest release of FactoryTalk Policy Manager version 6.4 now supports OPC UA. So what that's going to give our users is the ability to configure, secure non-Rockwell or a mixed vendor environment. So if the OPC UA server or client meets that part 12 of the OPC UA spec, which kind of covers the discovery mechanisms for certificates, then it can be included in a SIP security or FactoryTalk Policy Manager environment. You can use Policy Manager now to create, deploy security certificates and configure that segmentation that we have with SIP security with smaller zone cells and conduits. Configure secure communications using OPC UA, again, in that mixed vendor environment to bring different vendors together in one system. So in addition, with the release of version 36 of Studio 5000, we now have OPC UA built into our Logix-based controllers. So we now can basically have our controllers now be an OPC UA server and or client, that can't be both, and take part in that open platform communication system. So each OPC, you basically enable OPC UA on the controller, then share the tags or nodes they're referred to via OPC UA. They can be marked read only, or do not share them at all to take part in that OPC UA environment. Each controller does have a maximum number of tags or nodes that can be shared. So the lower end control and compact Logix don't support it at all. And then as you go through increased memory size, you'll have more and more tags that you can expose to OPC UA. The tech note in the bottom right-hand corner will give you the details. It's more of an FAQ document that jumps to several other knowledge-based documents, right? And now the OPC UA security for those Logix controllers is integrated into FactoryTalk Policy Manager. So it's going to give you a platform to not only secure our controllers, but other OPC UA vendors to have secure communications.
SIP security protocol. Okay, go ahead, Greg.
Yep. So just kind of reiterate what Chad was saying earlier with OPC UA and some of the tools that are built into it, we're going to be able to have that authentication to prevent unauthorized devices, prevent the tampering of communications, and using integrity, and then finally confidentiality. So FactoryTalk Policy Manager is going to give you that ability to manage all my devices, my servers, whether it be SIP security or OPC UA, all in one pane of glass, create that micro segmentation, and even go into some of the Rockwell devices via SIP security to be able to either enable, disable, or move to a secure platform for those embedded web pages that are included with our devices. If you don't have a device, or a device doesn't support SIP security natively, you can bring in a trusted IP to allow that device to take part in FactoryTalk Policy Manager and secure communications. Another option is to take that EN2TR, upgrade it to EN4TR, and then we do have a SIP security proxy, that 1783 CSP, that you can put in front of certain legacy devices to allow them to participate in a SIP security environment.
Okay, so I wanted to point out the different portfolio of products that we have. And I'll start with the one actually on the bottom right, SIP security. You know, this is an important tool if you're looking at your current install base and you're trying to just say, hey, you know, what can I do today with the infrastructure that I have today? Maybe these are technologies that you purchased, you know, Rockwell technologies that you purchased years ago that don't natively support SIP security, but you need a way to protect them. The SIP security proxy device is a simple tool that you can use, and it is interoperable with FactoryTalk Policy Manager, and it allows you to, again, manage authentication control, data encryption, and even do data integrity checks for that legacy asset, right? I think when you look at our other portfolio of software suites, you know, in the FactoryTalk line, or even, you know, the hardware side of this, you know, we are natively integrating SIP security functionality into our newer technologies. It is not enabled by default, but it is there by default. So important to, you know, we want to give you the ability to modernize, hopefully, but, you know, work with the budgets that you have and ideally lock down the environment today, right? So just important to point out that even if you don't have the ability to modernize all of your infrastructure today, the SIP security proxy device can go a long way, you know, to help you take advantage of FactoryTalk or SIP security and FactoryTalk Policy Manager today. Okay, so policy management using SIP security and OPC UA. Okay, so I wanted to call out first the reference to at the top here, IEC 62443. This is certainly one that's near and dear to my heart. And again, I say for a lot of reasons right now, some of which are not even technical focused. Alignment with this standard, as well as the NIST cybersecurity framework, means quite a bit to our customers, and even you know, a broader set of issues related with cybersecurity, right? So with FactoryTalk Policy Manager, and even some of the things that Craig just touched on, when you look at the capabilities of what the platform does from a segmentation perspective, from a zone, like designating zones of trust, or even policy management, zero trust, and you know, really locking down devices. When you think of IEC 62443 and the security control families that are called out in that standard, and your desire, hopefully, as an organization to align to that standard, FactoryTalk Policy Manager and SIP security go a long way in helping you align your security program practices with that standard, right? And that can mean a lot to the overall organization in terms of liabilities that are now associated with cyber risk management. Okay, so again, what is, in simple terms, what is Factory Talk Policy Manager. It's a centralized tool. It doesn't even have to be, you can use it to configure devices in the environment. It doesn't have to be actively running at all times. You can literally use it just to configure machines and say store it on a secure server in your industrial data center. You can keep it operational 24/7, 365, but you don't necessarily have to, right? It's a centralized tool for device configuration and management. So it gives you the flexibility to, again, run it all the time or run it and use it when you want to and need to, right? This is actually a dashboard setup for the Factory Talk Policy Manager suite, right? So wanted to kind of point out that one of the first things you do when you're building out your policies in this environment is ideally we're segmenting the OT environment based on whether it be machine type, based on logical function of a certain group of assets in a certain part of your production environment or your process. Or even devices that have similar security profile requirements, right? Maybe you designate based on low, medium, high in terms of criticality to operation. I often think of this as creating zones, whether it be based on, maybe assets in your safety instrumentation system, VLAN, or, your drives install base, et cetera. Assets in your environment that are, again, differentiated based on their criticality. Now, once you've created your individual zones, you'll be able to go into zone properties and get pretty granular about, again, we're speaking about zero trust. We're speaking about the data triad: confidentiality, integrity, and authentication. So in terms of managing security, whether it be for TCP or even UDP traffic, we can do both data integrity checks and confidentiality, or one or the other. We don't even have to do both. And then again, you can enable certificate or authentication management via those X.509 certificates, like I mentioned earlier. All right, so also like to mention, it's really important to work with your Reynolds Company network specialists or even your Rockwell resources when enabling this functionality. This is a scenario where we want to be very cautious because there is a nominal amount of overhead associated with enabling these security features. So we really like to partner very closely with our customers to not introduce any latency to the environment. There's tremendous value in deploying zero trust across the OT environment, especially when you think about how ransomware attacks are propagated. Ransomware exploits plain text protocols. So if you have unencrypted OT data in your environment, it is a primary target for would-be threat actors who want to financially extort money out of your business. So when you think of how can I today really prevent the possibility of ransomware in my environment, we need to encrypt the data in the OT environment. That will go a long way in making it very difficult for even remote threat actors to come into the environment and steal your network, right? So by getting back to this kind of technical piece of it, as I mentioned, we look at your TCP, your UDP traffic. We look at your requested packet intervals. We often use tools that are not on the topic for discussion today, but like our integrated architecture builder, simulation software. And I just want to emphasize that simulation software, and even partnering with your network specialist at the Reynolds Company and Rockwell before you enable these in your environment, to really make sure that that it is safe for use and it won't introduce any latency to sensitive deterministic production environments that you may have. So again, we have system-wide zones, conduits, and we're doing zone-based policies. You get an instant view within the Factory Talk Policy Manager tool of what's out there, what's configured, what's not. So I'm going to jump a little bit ahead because we've kind of already touched on some of these things. But single click, this is designed to be a tool is definitely designed with ease of use in mind. Okay, so policy management and add-ons. Craig, I believe I was going to let you talk to this one.
Yep. So some of the tools that are built into Policy Manager that are maybe considered add-ons, maybe not. You can use them both. But one is syslog routing configuration. So Factory Talk Policy Manager, if you're not quite ready for SIP security, the syslog might be a good start for you. So Policy Manager can go ahead and it doesn't enable syslog, but it will configure. You see these supported products. It will go ahead and configure those devices to report to a general syslog server that you see over to the right. So it'll push a policy out to tell these end devices, these servers, what protocol to use to get that information to a syslog server. So this syslog is just a messaging protocol. So it's going to produce, these are going to produce messages that could get pushed to a syslog server. The syslog servers can be aggregated, and then you can actually push the OT syslog information up to a enterprise-wide syslog server for a broader view of the overall enterprise. Just be aware there's certain field devices that support it. They are listed here when you go to configure syslog. Go ahead and next slide. You can go ahead and build that out too.
Sure. Went too far. There we go.
Yeah. So another tool or enhancement that's released with 6.4 is automatic deployment of a policy. So the manual workflow is still the most common, but with the enhancements of the SIP security devices that are in the field that you see, they have the ability to contact and query that policy, FactoryTalk Policy Manager server, or specifically there's a service that runs on that server to discover policies and certificates for those devices. So this is going to allow a faster trust establishment when a device is added, while reducing the risk when it's being configured. There is also, with that automatic device deployment, there's a device replacement. So if a device fails and everybody has that fear of it's 3 o'clock in the morning, the device fails, I'm getting the call. So that will reduce some of those fears that with an automatic device replacement procedure for those end devices. You can go to the next slide. It's not necessarily a tool, but some selections that you can control SIP bridging or browsing across the backplane. This is going to secure backplane communications. So on the bottom side here, you'll see the green. That could be an unsecured network or information coming from an EN2TR, and we're going to prevent that information from getting onto the secured SIP security. So I can close that bridging from unsecured networks. I can secure both inbound and outbound SIP bridging, all the way down to the specific slot number of the device, as well as secure that USB port. So if someone walks up to the front of the device, they can't start bridging across that backplane to get to unsecured devices. Next slide.
Okay. So Craig, if I could add one comment to that as well.
Sure.
When you look at, again, we're still talking in the context of zero trust and doing really policy designations here. But I would tell you, as your trusted partner, what we have also tried to do is, really scrutinize those unsecure legacy protocols. So not the main focus of today, but just certainly wanted to mention that when we look at visibility to those unsecure protocols, we've exhausted a lot of effort as a company to get across the backplane and with intrusion detection tools and see beyond TCP/IP based enabled devices. So this can be a conversation for another day, but I at least wanted to plant the seed in your minds that, hey, look, even if it's legacy unsecure protocols and you're looking for visibility, we have ways of doing this, right?
I just wanted to mention kind of outside Policy Manager, but what can be included or work with Policy Manager is our FactoryTalk Services platform. So this is going to secure users, user groups from specific actions on devices. But for version 6.4, traditionally FactoryTalk Services platform has used DCOM as its default communication protocol, which introduces several challenges due to dynamic ports needing to be open. We finally moved on in version 6.4 to Socket.io to eliminate that DCOM reliance and move to Socket.io. So this is going to do a couple things for us. It's faster, so we're going to see increased throughput, better communication, and of course, it's going to scale out better because I don't have to worry about all those dynamic ports and some of the security risks that DCOMS brings to an OT environment. So by default, it is going to be set to both. So it will allow 6.4 and lower installs to communicate using a combination of socket IO and DCOM. Once you do move to that socket IO only, older versions will not be able to communicate to the FactoryTalk directory server. So just be aware when you go to install it, it'll support both communications, and then you can enable socket IO once you get everything upgraded. Next slide. Another thing added in 6.4 was MFA, or multi-factor authentication. And we have two different offerings, a cloud-based one using Azure. So we can use Azure MFA for phone calls, voicemails, security tokens. We do support Azure Active Directory as well as Azure AD Directory services. And then if a cloud-based environment doesn't work for you, we do have an on-prem offering. It's not necessarily built into Active Directory, but we work with OpenID Connect identity providers that provide tools and software or on-prem solutions for MFA, like, again, phone calls, biometrics, wristbands, things like that. And this will work through FactoryTalk Security Windows-linked user groups. The other thing you're going to see is in the bottom left-hand slide, the FactoryTalk login dialog has been modified to support these new MFA tools that are built into FactoryTalk Services platform. So you'll see the traditional username and password, the Azure, as well as the OpenID Connect dialog included into the new logon format. That's all I had.
So yeah, Craig, appreciate that overview. And before we jump off the slide, I thought I would add just a quick comment here. You know, for those of you that are kind of close to the fire that is cybersecurity, I think you would certainly agree that one of the big focus points in this industry right now is artificial intelligence. Because while artificial intelligence has many benefits for machine learning, as an example, it creates a lot of challenges for cyber professionals that are trying to defend and trying to protect against malicious behavior. And so I wanted to kind of point out, again, what's in the image on the right, from the importance of these tools from an authentication perspective, because AI really magnifies the importance of user authentication. So as cliche as this may sound, it's always been scrutinized by something you have, something you are, when you act, where you are, or even something you know. AI is really one of those things that will create new challenges that really drive the necessity for authentication management. So again, I think this is another area worth considering why you should really look at adopting tools like FactoryTalk Security or even FactoryTalk Policy Manager and SIP Security as a part of the Zero Trust model, because as AI really continue and it's open source, as it really again takes a stronghold in industry, having a strong set of Zero Trust and tools that are highly capable in terms of authentication management are going to be very essential to your ability to protect your sensitive deterministic process network. Okay, so endpoint software and policy, we're getting close to the end of this slide deck, but we're going to shift a little bit. We're going to still talk about FactoryTalk Security, but we're also going to talk about some new acquisitions. But just wanted to point out the difference between FactoryTalk Security and FactoryTalk Policy Manager. FactoryTalk Security, for those of you that may have used it, as you know, it's a software application well designed for user authentication, again, authorization. Think of things like role-based access control are top of mind when you use tools like FactoryTalk Security, and even, of course, access control. And I'd also like to emphasize again, IEC 62443, I feel like for those that are really trying to develop a security program and are really trying to send all the right messages to the world around you, aligning your process with IEC 62443 is ideal. And the tools that we're talking about today help you do that. When you look at that 62443 standard, global OT security standard, there are 7 foundational security control families baked into that really define, hey, these are the ideal must-haves for the OT, to have a true OT defense in depth security program. A lot of what we've talked about today coincidentally align very well with those 7. We're talking about access control. We're talking about use control, or role-based access control. Principle of least privilege is another way to say it. Doing data integrity checks, doing data confidentiality or encryption, how you segment your network as well. So many of those defense in depth security tenets that are called out in 62443, you can solve those, you can implement those with the tools that we're talking about with you today, right? So again, FactoryTalk Security, software-based authentication or access control, role-based access control, wonderful tool. Integration with FactoryTalk Directory, of course. Even the Policy Manager. Again, when I think FactoryTalk Policy Manager, I often think of a tool that is very device-centric, field device. We're again doing our best to deploy zero trust across the physical assets that live in the environment. We're defining policies for physical assets to enable secure communications between assets in the environment, physical assets, right? So important to have both. Okay, so this is kind of a new endeavor for Rockwell Automation. In November last year, we made an acquisition of a company called Verve Industrial, and I'll touch on why we kind of did that and where it fits in with our overall value proposition to our customers. So we've talked about the benefits so far today about FactoryTalk Security, FactoryTalk Policy Manager, and really how we can help you lock down devices. We wanted to have a platform that was kind of an all-in-one that does true comprehensive asset inventory management. So we're not just looking at device level policies, we're really looking at kind of some of the main tenets that the average IT professional relies on to really do system maintenance, right? It's a deliberate effort on our part to kind of ease the suffering or the tension, the challenges associated with OT security. So Verve Industrial is a company that has its roots in OT, right? This is not an enterprise software application that was shoehorned to fit an OT environment. No. This was developed by instrumentation and controls engineers. They've been in operation for roughly 30 years, and they wanted to develop a technology agnostic asset inventory management tool. So as you can see in the cogs here in the machine, we're doing a number of things. We're doing, user and account management starting at the bottom. So again, I naturally think this is role-based access control, anti-malware, even intrusion detection. So this, before I kind of go through all those cogs, I wanted to point out that you could think of this as for those of you that like the EDR acronym, right? Endpoint detection and response. This is very endpoint centric. We are monitoring hundreds of device level characteristics to really do all of the things that you see here in the big cogs. We're looking at what firmware is running on it. Is the running config on the asset, is it really ideal from a cybersecurity perspective? We're looking at information that's already been published from various OEMs about latest firmware, or even known vulnerabilities, CVEs, common vulnerabilities and exposures associated with disparate technologies, not just Rockwell. So for us, in terms of our ability to bring value to our customers, we wanted to send a message that both the Reynolds Company and our partner network, Rockwell, we are offering true OT asset agnostic asset inventory management capability, right? Our managed service capabilities are very comprehensive. We know traditionally when people think of Rockwell, we think of Allen Bradley, but I would encourage that, our identity as a brand is to really be your trusted partners. The challenges that you face, we want to face with you and give you a simple way to protect your interests, protect your investments, but modernize where necessary. So the Verve Security Center platform here has a great deal of flexibility for offering you that single pane of glass to engage all assets in your OT environment. There's also an enterprise console for this. So not going to get too far today about the sensor devices, or I would just kind of say in simple terms for today that there's a mixture of different sensor devices that would live in the OT environment. Do no harm approach, of course. You'll have a site-based tool that would live in your industrial data center, but you can also have an enterprise management console. So if you have 10 plants, if you have 30 plants, and you want a single dashboard for someone like your CISO who lives at the enterprise level to simply reach out, see all assets across your entire production fleet with a tool that is a common single pane of glass, that's what this is. This is the challenge that it solves, right? When you look at how we, I think we would all agree that, having a tool that has all these wonderful feature sets is fantastic, but having a realistic, pragmatic approach to day one is also important. So this is kind of our partner network, Rockwell. When you look at our services capabilities, there's a lot baked into this slide, but this is literally our value proposition to you as far as what we do day one, maturity level one. We're going to look at some of the very obvious things from a network or even an endpoint perspective. Eliminate dual NICs. Look at your firewall rules as an example. Look at your patch management, what firmware you're running, and modernize. But we're going to be using the VERSE Security Center platform to constantly look at these different assets and look at any anomalous behavior as well. I would also like to point out that we view the Verve Security Center platform as an EDR tool, an endpoint detection and response tool. It pairs very nicely with intrusion detection visibility tools, say, Clarity, Clarity Continuous Threat Detection tool, or even Cisco Secure Equipment Access tool, Dragos. Those companies that we partner with in our technology partner network, we view this endpoint focused platform as being complementary to those. So it's a EDR, NDR type of scenario here where Verve is the endpoint, the other tools are the NDR, the network detection and response tools. So maximum visibility and great asset inventory management, administrative control of your entire OT install base. Before I jump off of this, I just had a random thought that came to me that I thought is really wonderful. I think, as we agree that one of the main challenges we always run into is we have this desire to do firmware updates, patch updates on the OT assets in the environment, but oftentimes we don't have the luxury. If we operate 24/7, 365, we have to wait till scheduled maintenance intervals to do this. So with the VERSE Security Center platform, one of many things I like about it is that it allows you to push that latest firmware to that machine asset, but not initiate a reboot so it'll flash to memory. You can literally have the ideal running firmware on the OT asset, but not initiate an instant reboot on the device. And it gives you the ability to schedule, hey, flash this, run this now, this latest firmware, but flash it to memory on a schedule that coincides with the next scheduled maintenance interval. So again, what does that mean to you in terms from an operational stability or reliability perspective to run the latest firmware without flashing it to memory instantly? Okay, so again, we're getting close to the end of this slide deck, but I wanted to point out again, and I just wanted to impress upon people, we're here to help you solve business challenges. So this is the lens that we commonly look at this at Rockwell about our value proposition, and we listen better than we speak, right? And so what we're trying to do is if you look on the left side of this, if you at current day are plagued by maybe a lack of security resources who understand OT, or even you've got a diverse ecosystem of technologies out there, maybe you really don't have a great degree of visibility, or you don't even have the confidence about the security controls that live in your environment. We are not just Allen Bradley anymore. We are a full-scale. Our identity will always be trusted partner. We will always be there to help you solve those kind of help you achieve those 4 business outcomes, as I mentioned in one of my initial slides. The way that we do that, under our capabilities column here, has grown tremendously. So whether it's doing I like to tell people we're meeting you at whatever step of this security journey that you're at. If you just want us for something simple, like just give me a snapshot of my network, and then it tells me the topography in terms of how everything is physically laid out. MAC addresses, associate, device IP, MAC addresses, etc. But also more importantly, tell me the common vulnerabilities and exposure points. We can give you that simple snapshot. Or if you really want someone to come in and do a full-on risk assessment, network assessment, look at just the network, look at the overall process, and give you important feedback about the vulnerabilities, we can do that. Or help you design the environment to look like what IEC 62443 says it should, or what the NIST cybersecurity framework says it should. Then we can do that. Or if your needs are really, look, I'd rather just simplify this on our end because we don't necessarily have the capacity to update people, processes, and technologies, but we do have the capacity to transfer this responsibility, this risk burden, if you will, to a trusted partner like Rockwell. We have that SOC managed security service capacity. We can, take it where it is and give you a high degree of confidence that we will align it with this, again, 62443 and NIST, so that you can send all the right messages to your board and the world around you about your security program. Okay, so this brings us kind of to the end of the slide deck here. We'll close this out. We will absolutely make this slide deck available. If there's anything that you saw today that you'd really like greater information on, we are happy to answer any questions that you have, or even have follow-up discussions. And I think I can speak well for Craig and myself. We thank you for your time. I'll open it up to any questions.
Great, thanks, Chad. I know Craig had dropped off, so great presentation. Feel free to, since everybody's lines are muted, please feel free to use the Q&A panel. And I believe Brandon might have just a few little closing things to talk about here as well.
I do, and it'll actually be very brief because Chad hit on it. I wasn't expecting him to there at the end as far as from the services offering. That's what I was going to hit on next, as far as service offering that the Reynolds Company can offer you in conjunction with Rockwell and some of our other automation solution partners. So I just want to just have a very few slides. I think it's only like 4 or 5 slides. Start with the slide here. These are outside of Rockwell Automation. And Rockwell is absolutely fantastic in what they do. We, as the Reynolds Company, have also partnered with a number of other trusted vendors and resources out in the marketplace. Quite a few of these partners that we have also have their own alliances and partnerships with Rockwell as well. And we, as the Reynolds Company, have partnered with them as to create our own partnerships as well. So it is a multi-pronged approach to achieve cybersecurity. There's not one particular vendor or solution or service that meets all that meets everything. Not all companies can do everything that needs to be done from a cybersecurity standpoint. So we have partnered with Rockwell, Clarity, TX1, Fortinet, all of these other companies, Cisco, that have also partnered with Rockwell themselves to kind of bolster our solution portfolio to make sure that we have the right capability for the customer and their challenges. And as Chad mentioned briefly at the end, I really want to talk about the services and the cybersecurity services that we as the Reynolds Company can offer. Those services do align with the NIST cybersecurity framework: identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. So those services are anywhere from asset inventory, vulnerability assessment, risk assessments, penetration testing from the identify portion, to secure remote access, endpoint protection, firewalls, network infrastructure from the protection side. From the detection side, we have threat detection services, industrial security appliances. We have incident responses and managed services offerings from Respond. And on the recovery side, we have comprehensive backup and restore services capability. So all of these services are available depending on where you are in your cyber journey. As Chad and Craig mentioned, we are looking to meet you where you are in your journey. If you're at the very beginning and you're just trying to identify what assets you have, or if you've already identified them, you're trying to figure out the best way to protect them, or if you're trying to figure out what's the best way to respond if you've already had an incident, we have services that are available to you for that. And I'm going to go over a couple high-level services over there that we have. As I mentioned, before an attack, we have the identify phase, which we have services such as Rockwell's install base evaluation. We also have the new vulnerability discovery survey, and then for asset inventory, we have risk assessments where we can do an OT cyber risk assessment, whether that be a light, standard, or comprehensive assessment, depending on what's needed for your environment. We can do penetration testing as well. So all of these different services available to customers as far as anything that happens prior to an attack taking place. We also have our standard and comprehensive network assessments, and those deliverables, you'll receive logical configurations, physical cabling and how it's currently laid out in the plant, as well as an executive summary for that C-suite that needs to review it if we're looking to then take this as a roadmap to build off of. And then you also get a full network inventory. The newest service offering that we offer is the vulnerability discovery service, where we will be deploying a simple executable to kind of get an asset inventory of what's deployed on the network. And not only will we be getting what's deployed on the network in terms of make, model, firmware, serial number, but we'll also be able to cross-reference all of those things to pull what are those critical vulnerabilities and CVEs associated with all those devices on the network, not just Rockwell devices on the network also. So any third-party automation device that may be living out on your network, we'll be able to pull all that same detailed information out with this service as well. And then the last one I wanted to discuss was the risk assessment. So that's where we would take it a little bit further than we do on the vulnerability discovery survey, where we will be identifying the vulnerabilities and possible attack vectors. So not only is it hey, these are the CVEs you currently have in your environment, but this is how you are potentially an attacker could potentially utilize these vulnerabilities to attack you. We can put together some risk mitigation strategies for you through that risk assessment, and based upon that, some business continuity for some control system health analysis, as well as some industry security standards compliance. And generally, those standards compliance are going to align with the NIST cybersecurity framework, IEC 62443. So that we're aligning to the best standards available to secure your network.